Hi there, smart drivers. Rick with Smart Drive Test talking to you today about you, the speeder. And we all do it. We all speed, and we are all guilty of that. That charge. Whether we're convicted of it or not is something completely different, and that's what we're going to talk about today in this story live stream. Day number 25 of the live streams, continuing every day at 11 a.m. during the lockdown. Stick around. We'll be right back with that story. Hi there, smart drivers. Rick with Smart Drive Test talking to you today about speed and speeding and why speeding is seen as the scapegoat for traffic crashes. I do not believe that speed is the reason that we crash on our roadways. I am very much of the professional opinion and conviction that mismanagement of space is what causes you to get into a crash or failing to yield the right of way. And Eric is here, 66 degrees in Minnesota, Minneapolis there, which is 68 degrees, is exactly 20 degrees Celsius. It is a beautiful day. Carrie is also in the Twin Cities. And Janet says, yes, I do speed. Yes, we all do speed. A few years ago when I moved to the Okanagan Valley, I took up skiing because we have two absolutely magic ski hills here. We have Big White near Kelowna, and we have Silver Star here in Vernon's, like 20 minutes from where I drive. And the first thing I did when I learned how to downhill ski was to go and get a helmet because I know myself, I love speed. It doesn't matter what it is on, whether it's on a bicycle, on a skateboard, in a car, on a motorcycle. I love speed. I am somewhat addicted to speed and, just awesome. And I went and got a helmet because I knew that I love speed. Especially skiing down the hill, riding on my push bike, and so I have had some colossal wipeouts. Fortunately, never any injuries or those types of things. No Sonny Bono moments or whatnot. May he rest in peace. And and my push bike. I was in Tasmania, coming down the hill, and if you ever go to Tasmania, Australia, the island of Tasmania is actually the center of the island is a plateau. So you go around the outer edge, and then when you go to the center of the island, you actually go uphill, and I think it's 800 or 900 meters. And I was coming down off that, and I sort of was running up 65, 70 kilometers an hour on my push bike, and I thought, okay, 75 kilometers an hour, I need to pay attention. For those of you in the States, 75 kilometers an hour is about 42 miles an hour. And I hit a top speed of 83 kilometers an hour coming down that hill on my push bike, and 83 is about 56, 57 miles per hour. Yeah, so we got going. And Eric says, yeah, be careful of speed traps. Yes, it is spring, and there are speed traps out. We had an Evel Knievel down here at the corner the other day, shooting people with the radar gun. For those of you who are not familiar with trucker parlance, Evel Knievel is a police officer on a motorcycle. And they are out, motorcycles are out, so we also need to be aware of motorcycles and smaller vehicles. And does anybody know what the number one reason why motorcycle riders are killed in car crashes? Well, let's ponder that for a minute here. I'll answer a couple of questions. Robert is here. Hello from Muncie, Indiana. The people who speed need to be fined $2,750 and they lose their right to drive for 6 months. Wow. It sounds, Robert, like you have a passion for people who are speeding. My friend Wheelman is here. Good afternoon, unloading in Patanzo, Spain. I probably didn't say that right, but there you are. And I am going to argue, Robert, that speeding is not the reason that we get into car crashes. People drive at very high rates of speed on interstates, 70, 80 miles an hour, and interstates are one of the safest roads that we have. Eric says also called 5-0, like Hawaii 5-0? That's interesting. Also called 5-0. Yeah, I just always called them Evel Knievels. County Mounties, plain rappers. State troopers, those types of things. Diesel bears, she bears, Smokey the Bear. Say that to somebody who doesn't know anything about any of that language, and it's funny to see the look on their face. So yesterday we talked about horses. We talked about horse-drawn traffic. We talked about the transition between horse-drawn traffic. Here I'm just, the sun has come out in my window over here, and it's kind of washing me out a little bit. So here I'll just make an adjustment here and tune that down a little bit. Yes. There we go. We'll see if that will fix it a little bit so I'm not so washed out. Okay, so we talked about horse-drawn traffic. We talked about horses. Cops called 5-0. Okay, yes. I believe it's in relation, Eric, to the TV show Hawaii 5-0. Yes, we just called them bears when I was in the trucking industry. You know, they had all kinds of names: Smokey the Bear, She Bears, Plain Rappers, County Mounties, Super Troopers. That was the name of them. And then, of course, there was that very, truck driver CB lingo kind of thing, keep the bugs off your glass and the bears off your ass. Hard to speed with horses, though. Actually, Eric, no, it wasn't hard to speed with horses. If the horse was attached to a load of, a wagon pulling a load, then yes, it was hard for the horse to speed. However, if it was just a rider on a horse, then it was very easy for a horse to speed. And the early interpretations of speeding was basically any horse that was galloping was speeding, right? Because as we talked about the other day, urban road speeds were, kind of 5-6 miles an hour. They were walking road speeds. What a person could walk at was what a horse could walk at. Horses had to maintain a walking pace for the whole day, especially if they were going to work 8 hours. I talked about that. I talked about the misconception, and actually, here I'll just show you this. I was reading my dissertation the other day, and looking up some of the information because it's been a long time, and I was talking to you about this, about horses, and William Hewitt, who wrote the most important stable management manual of the mid-19th century, noted that an unloaded horse, so a horse with an empty wagon, could travel at 15 miles per hour for 1 hour. So only for 1 hour could a horse travel at 15 miles an hour. 8.5 miles an hour for 3 hours, 6 miles an hour for 6 hours, and 4.6 miles per hour for 10 hours to attain peak efficiency. So they had done studies on all this to see how much a horse could work for the purposes of the day. So you have to keep in mind, Eric, that in the 19th century and into the beginning of the 20th century, horses and road speeds were only what a person could walk at a fast rate of speed. So, and in Melbourne, Australia, where I did my dissertation, they had cable trams, right? They had these huge cables underneath the streets, and the trams would attach to the cable trams, and the trams traveled at 8 or 10 miles an hour. As today, one of the definitions of speed, because, most of us think that when people are speeding, we think or we feel that it is exceeding the posted speed limit. But other definitions of speed and speeding on our roadways are faster than the posted speed limit, faster than the flow of traffic, and faster than me. Okay, so whatever you're driving, somebody's driving faster than you. So early definitions of speeding on public roads was speed differentials. How much faster are you going than the flow of traffic? How much faster are you going than me? And in Melbourne, Australia, as an example, the standard for speeding was cable trams, because cable trams traveled at a known rate of speed, and if another vehicle, a horse or somebody on a bicycle or somebody in a motor car, was traveling at a high rate of speed, they were going faster than a cable tram. They were going faster than me, because most people in Melbourne, Australia, at the turn of the 20th century were sitting on a cable tram. So this is how many of these people determined rates of speed and people speeding and whatnot. BD, how are you, my friend? Everything's good here. So this is how early definitions of speeding got originated, and then the motor car came in, and it became much more difficult to define rates of speed. They were still speed differentials. They were still going faster than the flow of traffic, the accepted rate of speed, which was essentially cable trams, right? Janet, I've paid my fair share of tickets, but now that I have my AZ license, I try to behave to protect that. Haven't had a ticket in probably 20 years. Yeah, I haven't had a ticket in a while either, Janet. But I got pulled over a fair number of times when I was speeding. For speeding, yeah. Fortunately, I only got an actual ticket a couple of times. A lot of times I got just a warning for speeding. But when you're, anyway, it is what it is. It is what it is. I just, and I advocate for new drivers that once you get your license, keep up with the flow of traffic. And the flow of traffic is going to be 5 to 10 kilometers an hour, 5 to 15 kilometers an hour more than what the posted speed limit is. It's going to be 5 to 10 miles an hour over the posted speed limit. And the reason that I advocate for new drivers to keep up with the traffic flow is because you are going to be more predictable. And I will say again and again and again that it is not speed that causes you to crash. Yes, higher rates of speed are going to make the crash more fatal, more devastating, and potentially will kill you. However, the problem that people have is they mismanage space. They're too close to fixed objects. They're too close to other drivers. Or they're too close to a fixed object. They're too close to a light standard. They're too close to the ditch. Or they're not paying attention. They're distracted driving. Because we have a very high number of crashes that are single vehicle crashes where people drive off roadways. They drive into fixed objects along the roadways. And traffic authorities, traffic safety specialists, we don't know why. Okay, we can posit all kinds of reasons. We can put forward that they were tired, they were fatigued. We also know that most people are distracted driving. They're looking at their phones, they're tuning their radio, they're drinking a beverage, they're combing their hair, they're shaving, they're eating. I already said that one. They're doing all kinds of things in their car. Or like a friend of mine who just got into a crash and ran into a telephone pole. This person had just flown back from the other side of the world, was completely jet lagged, was probably taking prescription medications. That's the other piece that I wanted to say is that most people who are driving motor cars are fatigued and not fully aware because they're abusing over-the-counter medications and prescription drugs. And, I hate to say it, but I think that our medical profession, doctors, have they have something to answer for in terms of prescribing medications to people. I've met several people in, my lifetime who are on enormous amounts of medications and are driving motor cars. And, I would not get in a vehicle with them because they are just taking so many medications. But they'll say, oh, they're prescription medications. That doesn't matter. The prescription medications cause problems with your body. I mean, as I've, for those of you who are hanging out with me every day, that my back has been out and I've been taking some of the prescription medications. And let me tell you, some of those prescription medications, I'm like, wow, that is not right. That is not right. And fortunately, I've been kind of on the side working with a massage therapist and, doing everything I can to get my back fixed. And the last couple of days, it's been way better. Awesome. Absolutely awesome. But prescription medication, oh my God. And people are driving around with prescription medication. So, anyway, that's a whole other chapter in terms of prescription medications and people, being distracted and whatnot. Janet, it's funny because my son would not go over the posted speed limit until this past year. I felt bad for him because people would pass, honk at him, give him the finger, and technically he's not doing anything wrong. Yes, technically he's not doing anything wrong according to the law, Janet. That's absolutely right. However, he's violating one of the base tenets of social driving. The base tenet of social driving is that you keep up with the traffic flow. And I'm glad that you finally got him to go with the flow of traffic. No police officer is ever going to give you a speeding ticket for keeping up with the flow of traffic. Because, why is that? We come back to what we were talking about cable trams at the beginning of the 20th century in Melbourne, Australia, is that speed differential. Okay? If everybody on the roadway, say for example that the speed limit is 50 miles an hour, if everybody on the roadway is driving 55 miles an hour and all of the vehicles are keeping together in a group and they're all traveling at the same amount of speed, no police officer is ever going to give you a ticket for that because it will never hold up in court. It will never hold up in court if the person challenges the speeding ticket and takes it to court. So, BD place. There's a lot of side medications of effects of medications. Yes, there are. Oh my God. BD place. Oh, there are some nasty effects of medications. I am so glad that I am not having to take the medications anymore because I know what it does to my body. I would rather have some pain and trying to manage that pain than be on prescription medication. And here's another thing. My doctor, I called him last week and I had some medications that weren't working. And what does he do? He assigns me more medications, different medications. The medical profession is not teaching us how to manage pain. They are not teaching us how to fix our bodies. They're just, I had this conversation with my massage therapist who's really been awesome and really helping me out. And he said to me, you're in pain. And I have been in incredible pain. I mean, you can ask my kids. I have been in incredible pain. There's been days, getting up in the middle of the night and I'm like screaming, hanging onto the fireplace mantle and barely able to walk because my muscles are so just like harp strings that are ready to break. And, when you're in that kind of pain, somebody in a mask and some anesthesia, shows up and says, oh, listen, I can cut you open, I can fix you. You're like, yeah, just make it go away, whatever. So, how do we manage pain? It's a question that we have to ask. And I've said to you before, this is the first thing in my life that has actually slowed me down. I've never actually been slowed down before in my life. This is the first thing that slowed me down, which has really sucked. Anyway, so speed and speeding and distracted driving and all of those types of things. And as I said to you, space management, not effectively managing space around your vehicle, not maintaining control of your vehicle. Those are the reasons that people crash. It's not speed. I mean, speed obviously is a contributing factor, but so many people, so many authorities like to just point the finger at speed and go, you're speeding, that's the reason. It's not the reason. It's nothing in life is ever monocausal. And when I say monocausal, what I mean is there's one thing that causes it. There's never one thing that causes it. There's so many different factors. There's so many different contributing things that happen. Is the reason that we get into trouble, is the reason that we have traffic crashes on our roads and those types of things. So let's go back to the interesting thing about speeding is that it was being policed by police at the beginning of the 20th century. And, with horses and police coming in and saying that horses were speeding and those types of things, it was very easy to say that a horse was speeding. I mean, because anybody who knows anything about horses, and of course when horses dominated the roadways, everybody knew about horses. Everybody knew when a horse was walking. Everybody knew when a horse was cantering. They knew when a horse was galloping, trotting. People knew that stuff because it was, they just knew about horses because they were everywhere. So people knew that. But when motor cars came along, they had to come up with a different way to police speeding. They had to figure out how to do it. And the other thing that I mentioned the other day was that only the wealthy in society could afford motor cars at the beginning of the 20th century. They were approximately $1,500 for a motor car. Most working class people were making £5 a week. They were 1,500 pounds, not $1,500. They were 1,500 pounds, which is, probably then it was, $3,000. It was a lot of money. So policing began to change because prior to the motor car, police were very much social order of the working class within society. They were only policing the working class. They did not intervene into the lives of the wealthy within society. So there was a huge change that went about at the beginning of the 20th century in the world with police forces, in the United States of America, and Canada, and Australia, and Europe, and other countries in the world. Police now began to intervene in the lives of the wealthy, and they went to court, right? And of course, just about every speeding ticket was being challenged by these wealthy people, because what happened was that most of the time you had to have two police officers over a measured distance, usually a quarter mile, and you had one constable, police constable. They weren't called officers at the time, they were called police constables. You had one police constable at the beginning of the quarter mile, and you had another one at the other end of the quarter mile. And somehow they had to work out some sort of signal to each other to start the timing. the stopwatch, and then they would determine how fast the vehicle was actually traveling. And all of this stuff was challenged in court. The wealthy people would go to court. They would challenge this. They would say, well, what measuring device was used to measure the quarter mile? Was it an engineer? Right? Is it specific? Do we know that it exactly was this distance? They would also challenge the measuring device, and sometimes the judges would not hold up that they had an actual specific stopwatch that was calibrated correctly for them to determine if in fact they were speeding or not speeding. But again, it was, sometimes it depended on who the judge was. Some judges were absolutely intolerant of speeding and would throw the book at them and would fine them. Other judges would come down on the side of the wealthy. But you have to understand that the ruling class at the beginning of the 20th century were very much the wealthy and the ruling class. These were the judges who were sitting on the bench. This is the other irony of speeding and policing the motor car to try and keep cities safe, to try and keep pedestrians and the public safe, was that the very people who were called upon to implement laws and legislation to control the motor car, to bring in the motor car legislation, were the very people who were driving the motor car. There was the irony. But the public brought enough pressure against the politicians, against the authorities within society, that eventually they were required to implement legislation that did in fact control the motor car. And, all of this became, went through court, trial and error. Cases became legal precedent. And as some of you may or may not know about the court systems, just a little bit about court systems is that a legal precedent. So when you go to court, we've all seen this, on television shows and those types of things, where somebody goes to court and they cite other cases as, this is what happened in this case. This was the ruling in this case. So, and many of these cases became legal precedent. They were cited in the legal journals, and then they went on and they said, okay, in this case, they were convicted of speeding, or they were convicted of drunk driving, or those types of things. So that's what happened through the beginning up until the 1930s. By 1930, the late 1920s and the 1930s, what had happened is that the court system became so clogged with traffic violations and contesting those traffic tickets and whatnot, that that police powers were increased, that they could give a speeding ticket on the spot, that it didn't have to go to court. So this is what happens. So with the motor car, you see increased police powers. It's the same thing as what we're seeing, or what we have seen in relation to drunk driving here in the province of British Columbia in the last 10 years, where police can convict motorists for drunk driving right on the spot. They can pull your car for 24 hours. They can pull it for a month, 6 months conviction because you blew a certain amount on a breathalyzer. So this is increased police powers because the court system is not working. The court system is overwhelmed. The court system is too many people in the court system. So what they do to try and alleviate that is they increase police powers. BD Place. There are areas where I live in which it is a speed trap where the cops will hide and give people tickets for going 4 to 5 miles an hour over the limit. It is crazy. BD Place, I have heard that before, that people will give you 45 miles an hour. Now, I'll tell you why this will not stand up in court, because I've been to court, and the reason this will not stand up in court with 45 miles an hour is because of the speed cameras. The speed cameras have a tolerance of plus or minus 3 miles an hour. They know, the manufacturers even cite this in the literature, that they have a tolerance of plus or 3 miles an hour. So the fact that they're citing for 4 or 5 miles an hour, that is unlikely that that's happening, because the machinery that they're using to measure people's speed has a tolerance of plus or minus 3. So it's very unlikely that they're doing that. I mean, it's probably more like 10 miles an hour over the speed limit, because police know that. They know that if they go to court and they give a speeding ticket for 5 miles an hour, that it's only about 2 miles an hour that they're actually over the speed limit, and no judge is going to uphold that in a court of law. So that's unlikely. I would take that with a bit of You know what I mean. Carrie, right now some drivers are speeding like crazy with less cars on the road. They forget that there are still a lot of road users on the road now, such as pedestrians and bicycles and motorcycles, as well as Eric said there. And my friend Farron is here. How are you, Farron, there in South Africa? Where it's opposite. They're going into fall in South Africa as opposed to us up here. Epic. Speaking of question last night, should American states and Canadian provinces use the 85 percentile? Eric, Epic, rather, I don't know enough about that. But, speed limits are speed limits. I'll need to do some research and I'll answer your question. I don't know. Jonathan, my friend, how are you? Jonathan is in New York. Excellent. Awesome. So, a lot of changes going on in terms of speeding and those types of things there with, the motor car at the beginning of the 20th century. The other problem with it is, there wasn't any demarcation of space in public road use when the motor car was injected into public road space, especially within cities, because you have to keep in mind, and I talked about this with London in the 19th century with the Jane Jacobs text there about cities and cities with the motor car and those types of things. You now had particularly with London and those types of places, you had all of the cabs, the buses, trams, horses, and now you put the motor car in this mix as well, and there's a huge speed differential with the motor car, which was introduced with the bicycle as well, but really was exacerbated by the motor car, and incredible mix of traffic. And for any of you who've been to other countries in the world, you've been to China or you've been to India or any other kind of lower socioeconomic class. I don't think we can say third world anymore, can we? I don't think that's PC. There's a different kind of language we use. But if you go to those countries and you see the traffic, that's what the traffic was in Canada, in North America, in Australia, in Europe at the beginning of the 20th century. It was this just crazy mix of road users. It was pedestrians, bicycles, trams, buses, cabs, motor cars, and then, when we were watching, my kids and I yesterday, the kids are gone today, so unfortunately they won't be here, but yesterday we were watching engineering. We were doing some homeschooling on engineering, and, we were watching some of the documentaries on Netflix, and there are some awesome documentaries on Netflix for your kids. The one we were watching was on engineering. It was Engineering Feats of the World. And I loved it because the three engineers that they talked about, the three engineers were all women, which I thought was awesome. The engineers were all women. But the one woman had traveled to Nepal, and because they had a massive earthquake there, and she went to study soil erosion, and she was studying the effect of the earthquake on buildings to see whether buildings could be made to withstand earthquakes. So they were going on a fact-finding mission, and they're in Nepal in one of the cities. I don't know which one it was, but there's a cow standing in the middle of the road, and all of the traffic is driving around the cow. And my kids are like, "Well, that's kind of funky," and I'm like, "Yeah, that's just." That's Nepal, that's India. There's just like you drive down to an intersection or somewhere in the middle of the street and there's just a cow standing there. This is what it was like at the beginning of the 20th century in terms of traffic and trying to control traffic. It was just a crazy notion, right? So if you get a chance to watch any of those documentaries, really good. The other one we watched was... And Farron's an engineer. Excellent. You can have a conversation with Scout about being an engineer. That's really awesome. We're working on Scout's math. She is having some challenges with that. Farron says she likes strict rules being enforced. Can you give me an example of a strict rule that you like enforced, Farron? So that was basically, the kinds of things that happen, and going back to demarcation of space. Over the first 3 decades of the 20th century, from 1900 to 1930, the other thing that you begin to see within society, and I call this kind of the hardening of the city, you begin to see people within public spaces being required, they're allocated to particular places, and the particular places that people are being allocated to are pedestrians. Pedestrians are being allocated to the sidewalk, whereas before the 1930s, people just walked on the road or wherever they could. They played in the roads. They lived in the streets. It was not uncommon in many places in Europe that you walked out the front of your house down the steps and you were on the road. There was no sidewalk. There was no buffer of, there wasn't a nature strip there or anything like that. It was like there was your house, there was the road, right? There's no buffer of space. There's no buffer of safety. So, many, many things. Farron, engineering mathematics is so awesome and dreadful. Okay, leave out the last bit, Farron, when you're talking to her. Talk about the awesome part. Yes, so yesterday's lesson on, I will just leave the speeding thing there for today, but I just want to talk about engineering. They were watching, earthquakes and buildings, bridges, suspension bridges. We the very famous Tacoma Bridge and the oscillation of the Tacoma Bridge. Oh, I was just fascinated by that. The wind got a hold of it and it just, destroyed the bridge. It was, oh my God, it's just like engineering and the wind tunnels and those types of things. And then we watched a documentary on the historical engineering advancements that allowed skyscrapers to go taller and taller and taller. So we talked about that this morning when we went for a walk. We talked about the 8 things that allowed skyscrapers to go higher and higher and higher, and talking about the safety elevator and those types of things, and talking about wind, its impact on skyscrapers, and fire and safety and terrorism. Unfortunately talked about 9/11 and whatnot, but brilliant. Presto, what's up? Haven't been able to take my test or get my license due to the pandemic. Being able to get on the freeway a lot recently though. Awesome. And yeah, I'm sure that working on the freeway and highways is probably a bit easier due to the fact that there's reduced traffic and whatnot. Hey Rick, apologize and wait. It's because I saw a mod for an American truck simulator that has R2 and D2. Tim, no more speeding today. We're all done here. I'm just gonna wrap up here a bit and carrying on here. But I will talk more about speeding tomorrow, Tim. I'll carry on with the conversation and kind of move through traffic safety from the 1930s, kind of probably up into the 1950s and whatnot, and talk about that. So thanks very much for being here, Tim, and hopefully you're doing well with all this lockdown and craziness that we're experiencing here in the world. All right. And my friend Katie is here. How are you, Katie? So, and I'm just going to wrap up here with one thing. I'm almost done. I got an appointment at noon, but I just want to wrap up here one thing. The other day, I was talking to you about job search. I was talking to you about job search. And one of the things that I told you was the course that I took in the late 1990s about how to find a job, right? And I came up, one of the person who was teaching the course was introducing Jack Canfield. This is the book I'm reading, Jack Canfield on the Success Principle. And I think one of the things that we all struggle with, right, is kind of being grateful for where we're at in our life, right? We always want to do more. We always want to try and move forward. Excellent. Okay, Tim, all the best, and we'll talk to you soon. Katie, doing great. Awesome. Hey, Rick, when I was trying to deposit my money, a girl that was driving almost hit me, and I'm entering Zaxby's. Well, we're happy to hear that you're okay, Jaden. That's great. So one of the things that we struggle with in life, or at least one of the things I struggle with, I'm not going to say that you struggle with it. I mean, maybe you don't. Maybe you just got it really great. But one of the things that I try and teach my kids is about gratitude, right? It's about the things that you have. And I had a conversation with Scout about this morning, because Coach says this, and maybe he doesn't say it in a way that the kids kind of understand it or get it. It's a little bit, I think the kids take it's as a bit abrasive. But and that's one of the things I try and teach my kids, is to be gracious about the things that they have in life, and be gracious for what other people are offering them and those types of things. Anyway, I've been reading this text. I just want to read you this the last 2 paragraphs here. Or I just want to read you one paragraph here. It says, behavior number 6, maintain an attitude of gratitude. Developing an attitude of gratitude and appreciating the people you lead returns tremendous benefits. Scientists are now documenting the health benefits from practicing gratitude and are finding that those who are consistently acknowledge and thank others have lower levels of stress, are more optimistic, and are less frequently drawn into anger, bitterness, and frustration. Gratitude and appreciation improves mood, makes you feel lighter, and helps you experience less stress. You simply cannot hold negative and positive emotions at the same time. Those around you will enjoy the same positive benefits, resulting in increased motivation, more involvement, and greater commitment to your cause. So this is one of the things that I talk to my kids about. This is one of the things that I work really hard and am very conscious about being gracious for other people. I've been struggling with this a fair bit with the YouTube channel of late, because as I've talked to you before, the YouTube channel is, it's essentially on life support. I mean, these live streams every day are on life support. And, I could say to myself, oh, wow, I'm only getting 20 people on a live stream every day. But you know something? I am very grateful for all of you who show up here every day, come here, listen to me, and learn. Because you know something? If I had 20 people in an air brakes course, I would think, oh my God, that's a lot of people. And 20 people is a lot of people. And, we're all having an impact on other people. So, and, I take the time to acknowledge you. I take the time to thank you for being here, because you make the Smart Driver community better. And without you, I couldn't do it. And, my sensei said this to me in the 1990s when I started doing karate. And I showed up one night. I was the only student who showed up to class. And he said to me, you affirm what I do. And, maybe at the time I didn't really understand it. And I didn't really understand it at the time, because I really had never been in a position of leadership in my life. And I mean, now I'm in a position of leadership. I am in a position of leadership. I'm the captain of the ship of the YouTube channel, right? And we're all here, and you ask me questions, and I try and field those as best I can. We're all doing well, and I appreciate you. I appreciate you coming here and listening to me and helping me, and we together, we all get better. And so it's really awesome. So today, last of the live stream today is about gratitude, being really grateful for where you are in life and all the awesome things that we have in our world. Just the fact that we all have smartphones in our pockets and, basically computers. And that's really tremendously awesome. So, Jaden, I don't know if you have sparkling ice in Canada, but you should try the coconut pineapple zero sugar. It's really good. I'll have a look and see if it's here, Jaden. I don't know whether it is or not. Eric, totally grateful for you and all your knowledge, all you do for us in Smart Drive Test. Thank you so much, Eric. That's awesome. Lightning Farron says she's grateful to be here. Grateful to all your excellent driving safety advice. Thank you. And awesome. That's really great, Carrie. Thank you so much. Greatly appreciate it. So we're going to leave it there for today. And we'll see you tomorrow at 11 a.m. Same bat channel, same bat time. And remember, pick the best answer, not necessarily the right answer. Have a great day. Bye now.